Crack! The clear and melodious sound of bones cracking resounded. And then a shrill cry resounded from Lung Wuxiang while his figure was blasted flying. As for his right arm, it flew off along with a fountain of blood. Bang! The ground beneath Lung Wuxiang was instantly smashed open as he crashed down upon it. Even though he wasn't dead, he was crippled. Because Xianxia's strength hadn't just blasted his right arm off. It had even broken all the bones within Lung Wuxiang's body. In short, Lung Wuxiang was completely crippled if he didn't have precious treasures of the heavens and the earth to repair his injuries. The others in the surroundings were dumbstruck. After all, a 9th-rank monarch realm expert had been crushed in an instant by a single attack. Such a scene was extremely shocking to everyone in the surroundings. Gong Jian, Mu Ling, and the others' eyes were filled with shock as well. It was especially so for Gong Jian and Mu Ling because they were very clearly aware what instantly annihilating a 9th-rank monarch realm expert represented. It represented that it was very likely that he could ascend onto the hallowed rankings. At the same time, it represented that this fellow before them, Yang Man, was even stronger than the two of them. Mu Ling was overjoyed once she overcame her shock because she'd made the right bet. From today onward, Lunar Right Hall would have an extraordinary genius who was a body refiner. Yang Yi glanced at those profounders from Snow's Lament, and it caused them to move back repeatedly with horror. Yang Yi didn't attack, and he just spoke indifferently. Go back and tell that fellow, the master of Snow's Lament, that this is the last time. This is the last time I'll show mercy. If Snow's Lament dared to look for trouble with me again, then it wouldn't end with just the death of a few people. Yang Yi turned around and walked over to Mu Ling's group while he spoke. Meanwhile, Lung Wuxiang, who was lying in the hole on the ground, spoke fiercely. No matter who you are, you'll definitely pay for what you've done. Yang Yi stopped moving, he turned around, and then walked step by step towards Lung Wuxiang. Moreover, he spoke as he walked. Actually, it didn't matter to me whether I killed you or not, because you're insignificant to me. However, I don't like being threatened. So, you can die now. The ferocity in Lung Wuxiang's eyes instantly transformed into terror when he heard this. Actually, there was terror in his heart just now, and the most important thing for him right now was to leave as soon as possible. The only reason he's spoken those words was because he didn't want to show weakness. However, he hadn't expected that this fellow before him would actually intend to kill him. Stop him! Lung Wuxiang roared loudly. Many members of Snow's Lament hesitated, because the man before them was too strong. He was strong to the point they were completely devoid of confidence. However, there were still some who charged forward. Over a dozen Monarch Realm experts who had a comparatively good relationship with Lung Wuxiang charged at Yang Yi. They didn't dare hold back at all, and they immediately executed their strongest attacks. Because those had taken the lead, many others who were still hesitating finally stopped hesitating and charged forward as well. In an instant, Yang Yi was surrounded by a sea of people. Bang! Bang! Explosions resounded incessantly, and then figure after figure were blasted flying. Yang Yi had fully given up on defending himself, and he just allowed their attacks to smash against his body. Of course, it wasn't that he refused to dodge, but there were too many of them, so he couldn't dodge at all. Yang Yi was truly furious when they swarmed him, so he stopped holding back and exerted his full strength with every punch he executed. So, any enemy who suffered a punch from him was either killed on the spot or lying paralyzed on the ground with heavy injuries. It was a slaughter. Yang Yi was carrying out a true slaughter. Body refiners are actually that formidable. Countless profounders were beyond shocked as they watched Yang Yi slaughter them. Of course, they were even more shocked by the fact that Yang Yi dared to slaughter them like that. Even Gong Jian and Mu Ling were shocked by Yang Ye's actions. After all, they were in the ancient city of Hallows. Even though fighting has never been prohibited in the city, there were very few that dared to openly slaughter others like this, because all of them had concerns of their own in the end. However, this body refiner called Yang Man didn't just have no concerns at all. He seemed to be growing more and more absorbed into it. He can't be allowed to continue slaughtering them like this. Mu Ling spoke in a low voice. Fu Jingxian shook her head and said, "That's impossible. Unless those fellows from Snow's Lament stopped themselves. Otherwise, He will absolutely not stop. If Yang Yi was one to stop, then the fire spirit race wouldn't have suffered that many losses. Stop! Suddenly, a furious howl resounded, and it shook the heads of everyone here to the point their heads droned. Their expressions changed because it was definitely a half-saint. Sure enough, an old man appeared here. As soon as the old man arrived, Yang Yi and the members of Snow's Lament were instantly pushed apart by a powerful wave of energy. "It's Elder He!" someone exclaimed. Mu Ling's face instantly fell when she saw the old man because the old man had a very good relationship with the master of Snow's Lament. Of course, every single group within the Hallowed Halls had backing of their own, and Lunar Right Hall did as well. However, the problem was that this elder stood on Snow's Lament's side. The old man glanced at the surroundings, and he noticed there were around 200 corpses on the ground. Moreover, there were over 20 that belonged to Monarch Realm experts. He withdrew his gaze, and then it descended onto Yang Yi before he said, "You killed all of them?" Yang Yi nodded. The old man spoke in a deep voice. "Your strength far surpasses theirs, so you just had to beat them back. Why slaughter them like this? Are such actions any different than the actions of those defiant profounders?" Yang Yi replied, "Elder, you have to understand that it wasn't I who insisted on slaughtering them. It was they who chose to try and kill me. If I didn't have some strength, then it might be me and my friend who were lying on the ground right now. Moreover, those who intend to kill should be ready to be killed. Since they wanted to kill me, they should be prepared for their own deaths." "How presumptuous!" the old man roared furiously. "Are such actions any different from that of those defiant profounders? Countless elites of my human race will die if you're allowed to live. I'll eliminate a calamity like you for the sake of the human race." As he spoke, the old man suddenly slapped his right palm towards Yang Yi, and the formidable force it carried caused the space around Yang Yi to be compressed to the point of warping. Mu Ling and the others were horrified. They hadn't expected that Elder He would attack just like that. She'd sent for help from Lunar Right Hall at the instant that Elder He had arrived here, but Elder He had attacked directly. So all she could do was just watch helplessly. After all, the attack of a half-saint wasn't something that she could resist. The members of Snow's Lament were overjoyed. It was especially so for Lung Wuxiang. At this moment he was laughing, and it was a very mad and savage laughter. A ferocious expression had instantly crept up onto Yang Ye's face when the old man attacked. He didn't hesitate to smash his fist against the old man's palm. Bang! The formidable force of the collision instantly blasted countless cracks open on the space around the point of collision, and the enormous force of the old man's attack pushed Yang Yi over 30 m back. Mu Ling, Gong Jian, and the others opened their eyes wide, and their eyes were filled with disbelief. On the other hand, the smile on Lung Wuxiang's face had frozen. He resisted the attack of a half-saint? At this moment, a wisp of shock had flashed through Elder He's eyes as well. He'd thought that it would have been able to instantly annihilate that ant at the Monarch Realm, but he hadn't imagined that Yang Yi would be able to forcefully resist his attack. Moreover, Yang Yi seemed like he was completely fine. When did such a monstrous genius appear in the Hallowed Halls? A wisp of ferocity flashed through Elder He's eyes, and the profound energy within him started to surge madly, because he was very well aware that if he didn't seize this opportunity to kill Yang Yi now, then he might not have another opportunity like this in the future. Because Yang Yi had both strength and potential, so Lunar Right Hall would absolutely not allow him to kill Yang Yi. Moreover, he was very clearly aware that enmity had formed between them because of his attack. So, it was best for him to eliminate such a monstrous genius before he could grow stronger. Elder He stopped hesitating when he thought up to this point. He raised his palm and swiftly slapped it down towards Yang Yi again. An enormous palm that was over 300 m wide flashed forward, and it tore through space and appeared above Yang Yi. After that, it smashed down towards him like a mountain. The powerful energy contained within the attack caused the ground around Yang Yi to quake while the spectating profounders started retreating repeatedly with horror. A vicious expression flashed through Yang Ye's eyes as he suddenly stomped the ground with his right foot and shot into the air. After that, he clenched both his fists and smashed them against the enormous palm. Bang! The enormous palm trembled violently while countless cracks appeared on it. However, a mouthful of blood sprayed from Xianxia, while the enormous palm pressed him down towards the ground. Right when he was about to collide with the ground, Xianxia suddenly pulled his fists back and smashed them upward again. Bang! The spectators watched with shock as Elder He's attack was blasted into pieces. Elder He's eyelids twitched when he witnessed this scene. He knew that he'd really underestimated this fellow's strength and potential. Of course, it didn't make him abandon his intentions to kill Xianxia, and it even allowed him to realize that he absolutely couldn't allow Xianxia to live. Otherwise, Xianxia would definitely become a threat to him in the future. Right when he was about to attack once more, an old man suddenly appeared out of thin air. Mu Ling instantly heaved a sigh of relief when she saw the old man, and then she hurriedly walked over to Xianxia. She led Xianxia over to the old man and said, "Mu Ling and our new member, Yang Man, greets Elder Li." Elder Li nodded slightly, and his gaze lingered on Xianxia for a short while before he smiled. "Not bad. Not bad. Cultivating the body to such an extent is rare even amongst the demon race and devil race. Don't worry, since you've joined Lunar Right Hall, then I'll definitely protect you today." When he spoke up to this point, he turned around and gazed at Elder He. "Elder He, are you going to leave now, or should we have a spar?" Elder He had a gloomy expression on his face, and then he glanced coldly at Xianxia before he turned around and left with the members of Snow's Lament. Meanwhile, Mu Ling said, "Young man, you absolutely can't be so impulsive in the future. If you want to kill someone, then it's best if you issue a challenge before you kill that person. In other words, it's best that you do it in a life and death arena. So long as it's like that, then no one can interfere, even elders can't." The corners of Xianxia's eyes twitched slightly, and then he said, "Where's Snow's Lament's headquarters?" Mu Ling was slightly stunned. "What are you thinking of doing?" A ferocious smile arose on the corners of Xianxia's mouth. "Since they are my enemies now, then it's best to annihilate them. Would Snow's Lament spare him? It wouldn't. They would definitely act again and again. Since it was like that, wasn't it better to take the initiative than passively deal with the trouble they caused him?" There was a tall tower at the south of the ancient city of Hallows. The tower was around 3 kilometers tall and 300 m wide. There were 3 enormous golden characters at the top of the tower. Even though Snow's Lament was inferior to Lunar Right Hall and the Alliance of Sabers and Swords, both those groups and even the geniuses on the Hallowed rankings were quite fearful of it. Because the founder of Snow's Lament was a monstrous genius who was once the first on the Hallowed rankings. During that period in time, Lunar Right Hall and the Alliance of Sabers and Swords hadn't even been created. At that time, the only organization for the younger generation of the city was Snow's Lament. Even though the world changed with time, and Snow's Lament had declined, its resources and reserves still existed. That was the main reason it still existed even though its overall strength was inferior to Lunar Right Hall and the Alliance of Sabers and Swords. Xianxia wasn't joking, and he'd arrived before the tower which belonged to Snow's Lament. While he'd never intended to cause trouble upon coming to the city, it just so happened that others had to offend him. This was how he did things. If one respected him a little, he would respect them even more. But if another disrespected him, then why should he respect them? Snow's Lament had sent a half-saint to crush him, and that had undoubtedly infuriated him. Mu Lin's group and countless other profounders who'd come to watch the show were standing behind Xianxia. A wisp of worry flashed through Mu Ling's eyes. She tried to persuade Xianxia earlier, but she hadn't succeeded. At this moment, she felt quite regretful. She regretted telling Xianxia that it would be fine to kill them if he did it in an arena of life and death. Of course, she understood that the matter might not have ended just like that, even if she hadn't spoken those words. A cold glow flashed through Xianxia's eyes as he gazed at the 3 characters at the top of the tower, and then he suddenly smashed his fists forward. 2 waves of energy shot out violently and instantly blasted those characters into powder. Today, I, young man, will set up an arena of life and death right here before Snow's Lament. Any profounder of Snow's Lament may ascend the arena to fight me in a battle of life and death. Xianxia's voice was enhanced by profound energy, and it rumbled forward like a thunderclap. Has he really gone mad? He intends to challenge Snow's lament on his own? Isn't he being a little too confident? His strength is formidable indeed, but I refuse to believe that he can challenge the entire Snow's lament on his own. Not to mention him, even those monstrous geniuses on the hallowed rankings wouldn't dare to do this, right? Of course, those 3 fellows in the top 3 are excluded. Hee. No matter what, the enmity between that fellow, young man, and Snow's lament is irreconcilable now. It would be fine if Snow's lament is able to kill him right here and now. They would be able to take revenge and rally the reputation of Snow's lament. But if they fail, TSK, Snow's lament will be finished. The master of Snow's lament has always been mysterious. I heard that even some of the main members of Snow's lament haven't met him. I wonder if he'll show himself. TSK. I really look forward to that. How audacious! A furious howl resounded from within the tower, and then a figure flew out before countless other profounders charged out behind him. The person who led the group was a young man around the age of 20. He held a spear in his hand, and that spear flickered with a cold and sharp glow. As soon as he arrived here, he glanced coldly at Yang Yi before he gazed at Gong Jian and Mu Ling who stood behind Yang Yi, and then his face fell slightly. Gong Jian knew that the young man had misunderstood, so he immediately smiled and said, "Su Qing, I'm only here to watch the show and nothing else." As he spoke, he led the members of the Alliance of Sabers and Swords to the side. Su Qing's expression eased up slightly, and then he gazed at Mu Ling. Mu Ling was just about to say something when Yang Yi spoke before her. "There's no need to look at them. I'm the one who has come here to fight all of you, and I'll be the only one." Su Qing gazed at Yang Yi and said, "You're that fellow young man who killed the members of Snow's Lament?" Yang Yi nodded and said, "I am." Su Qing's expression became ferocious as he said, "I haven't even gone looking for you because you killed members of my Snow's Lament, yet you've actually come looking for us instead? All right, that saves my time." Yang Yi suddenly gazed at Mu Ling. The latter hesitated for a moment before she flicked with her finger, and a piece of paper flew over to Su Qing. She said, "Sign the agreement." Su Qing didn't hesitate to flick with his finger, and a drop of blood fell onto the piece of paper. After that, his figure flashed explosively towards Yang Yi. "Raging Dragon!" Su Qing roared furiously as his spear suddenly left his grasp and shot towards Yang Yi. The energy around his spear suddenly transformed into an enormous dragon, and the spear was like its backbone as it opened its enormous mouth and bit down towards Yang Yi's head. Yang Yi didn't move, and he merely smashed his fist forward when it arrived 3 m before him. Yes, he didn't use any flashy movements at all, and he just launched a very simple punch. Bang! The powerful force within his punch instantly blasted the dragon apart. Meanwhile, Su Qing's speak arrived in front of Yang Yi. However, it wasn't long before Su Qing's expression changed, because Yang Yi had grabbed the tip of his spear. Too weak. As soon as he finished speaking, Yang Yi suddenly twisted his right hand while a powerful force surged out from within it, causing Su Qing's figure to be blasted away. Meanwhile, the spear in Yang Yi's hand suddenly flew out from his grasp. Hiss! The spear pierced through Su Qing's body, and then it carried him along for over 300 m before it nailed him onto the tower's wall. Su Qing was dead. The surroundings were death-silent, because it was another instant annihilation. How strong is he exactly? Mu Ling was thinking about the exact same thing, because up until this very moment, this fellow before her, young man, still hadn't revealed his true strength. Or it should be said that the members of Snow's Lament hadn't been able to make him reveal his true strength. She felt that even the half-saint from before had probably been unable to make him truly reveal his strength. So it made her wonder exactly how strong he was. Is he comparable to the top 10 experts on the hallowed rankings? Took week. Next, Yang Yi glanced coldly at the members of Snow's Lament while his voice was without a shred of emotion. Just as he'd expected, Snow's Lament had no intention of putting the matter to rest, but that was exactly what he wanted. Even though the members of Snow's Lament were exasperated by his words, they didn't dare to charge forward, because he was even able to instantly annihilate one of the 3 generals of Snow's Lament, Su Qing. So, they would probably have no chance to even attack if they were to fight him. Meanwhile, an old man appeared before Yang Yi, and it was Elder He whom he'd met earlier. At this moment, Elder He had a terrifyingly gloomy expression on his face, and he stared fixedly at Yang Yi and said, "Young man, I understand that you're young and full of spirit, but people who don't know when to stop usually die very early, regardless of how extraordinary their natural talent and potential are. After all, such people are still weak like ants to some people." Yang Yi chuckled and said, "I did try to stop just now, but you've seen the outcome of that. Moreover, I'm able to discern from your gaze that you won't give up on killing me even if I back down right now. Since it's like that, then why should it? Right? You'll die." Elder He stared fixedly at Yang Yi and said, "I swear." Yang Yi stared at Elder He and said, "I might die, but it'll absolutely not be at your hands. Besides that, even if I do die, I'll drag some people down with me. Didn't you want to protect Snow's Lament? I'll kill them one by one as you watch." If the old man wanted to kill him, he would need to look for a deserted place, but would Yang Yi fear him at such a place? Even though the old man was a half-saint, he was even inferior to Guardian Lin, who was now a sword servant within the primordial pagoda. Not to mention that Yang Yi had the stone of suppression as well. A violent and ferocious aura started to surge from Elder He while stared at Yang Yi. It seemed like he would attack at any moment, but Yang Yi's face was calm and completely devoid of any fear. Elder He didn't attack in the end because he had no reason to, and he had no chance. Because he knew that Elder Li was here, so he would definitely be stopped if he tried. "Don't think that no one in Snow Lament can deal with you." Elder He's figure flashed and vanished on the spot once he finished speaking. Mu Ling heaved a sigh of relief when she saw that. Even though that fellow before her, Yang Man, had resisted 2 attacks from Elder He, she didn't think that he could fight a half-saint. After all, only the monstrous geniuses in the top 3 positions on the hallowed rankings could fight half-saints while they were at the monarch realm. On the other hand, while Yang Man was a monstrous genius, she felt that it was impossible for him to compare to them. But no matter what, Mu Ling felt that Lunar Right Hall had gained from all of this. Because so long as Yang Man could leave safely today, then Lunar Right Hall's reputation would shoot up and surpass the alliance of sabers and swords. Of course, it was clearly not something easy to accomplish. Yang Yi glanced at the profounders of Snow's Lament who stood around him and said, "What? Doesn't Snow's Lament want to kill me? I'm standing here right now, yet you don't dare to fight me? Or perhaps the members of Snow's Lament are cowards, and all you know is how to bully the weak yet fear the strong." The profounders of Snow's Lament were furious, and all of their faces flushed red as they glared at Yang Yi. However, the scene of Yang Yi instantly killing Su Qing just now played out incessantly within their minds. Even though many were afraid, there were quite a few who couldn't endure such humiliation, and they signed the agreement for a life and death battle. Bang! A figure was blasted flying. It was another instant annihilation. Took weak. Next. Yang Ye's voice resounded once more. Yang Ye's ability to instantly kill them didn't stop them from signing the agreement in succession. So, merely a short while passed before over a dozen corpses were lying below the tower. This scene caused many to feel horrified. Suddenly, a woman who wore dark golden gloves arrived here. My God! It's the 10th on the hallowed rankings, Yu Wushuang, who's said to be the fist tyrant. What's she doing here? It really is her. What's she doing? Oh my God! She actually intends to sign the agreement? She actually intends to help Snow's Lament? What's going on? The spectators watched as that woman dropped a drop of her blood onto the agreement Yang Yi had prepared for the deathmatch. Once it was signed, then death had to be decided. What's going on? Mu Ling's expression was extremely unsightly. She hadn't expected that Yu Wushuang, who was ranked at the 10th position on the hallowed rankings, would make an appearance here. And she'd never imagined that Yu Wushuang would actually help Snow's Lament. Who was Yu Wushuang? She was an extraordinary genius who had just risen to prominence in the hallowed grounds. When Yu Wushuang had just advanced into the monarch realm, She'd swept through countless geniuses of the hallowed halls with her fists, and she'd even dragged down the monstrous geniuses who sat at the 10th position on the hallowed rankings. Her fists were strong to the point that they could tear dragons apart. So she was called the Fist Tyrant. That meant that her fists were the strongest in the hallowed halls. Only cowards slaughter the weak. Yu Wushuang gazed at Yang Yi while killing intent flickered in her eyes. Yang Yi replied, "It's best that you leave, so I don't have to be a coward again." She naturally understood what he meant, but she didn't get angry and laughed instead. "Do you know? That fellow on the 10th position of the hallowed rankings was arrogant just like you. But do you know what happened to him? Let me tell you the answer. I blasted his head apart with a single punch, just like a hammer smashing a watermelon apart. Let me tell you something else. I'll do the same to you. Why don't you give it a try?" said Yang Yi. A ferocious expression arose on the corners of her mouth, and she was just about to attack when Mu Ling spoke abruptly from the side. "Young Miss Yu, this is between Yang Man and Snow's Lament. Why interfere in something like this?" Yu Wushuang stroked her left chest lightly, and then a snowflake appeared there. It was the symbol for Snow's Lament. The expressions of Mu Ling and the others changed slightly, and even Gong Jian, who was watching the show, had revealed a similar reaction. "Understand now?" said Yu Wushuang. "You're actually a member of Snow's Lament?" Mu Ling took a deep breath, and then she spoke in a voice that was filled with shock. She hadn't expected that Yu Wushuang, who was ranked at the 10th position on the hallowed rankings, would actually belong to Snow's Lament. It wasn't that the top 10 geniuses couldn't join groups, but they usually didn't. Because since they could ascend onto the hallowed rankings, every single one of them possessed extraordinary natural talent and were terribly arrogant. So, how could such existences obey the orders of others? She hadn't imagined that the 10th ranked on the hallowed rankings would have actually joined Snow's Lament. It was something that she couldn't wrap her head around no matter how hard she tried. Mu Ling noticed that Snow's Lament was quite mysterious. Unlike Mu Ling and the others' shock, the members of Snow's Lament were overjoyed. At this moment, Yu Wushuang was like a torch in the darkness, and she gave them light and hope. The genius at the 10th position on the hallowed rankings actually belongs to our Snow's Lament. Haha, Young Man is dead. He's dead. Haha, awesome. Let's see how the Lunar Right Hall and Alliance of Sabers and Swords dares to act arrogantly in front of us from now on. Our Snow's Lament will be the strongest from today onward. Yu Wushuang, Yu Wushuang, Yu Wushuang, the Fist Tyrant, the Fist Tyrant, the Fist Tyrant. At this moment, all the members of Snow's Lament were going mad with excitement. Weren't your fists very strong? Then I'll cripple them first before slowly breaking every single bone within you. I'll make you realize that not just anyone can trample upon my Snow's Lament. Yu Wushuang walked slowly towards Yang Yi while spikes that were a few centimeters long gradually grew out of the dark golden gloves on her hands. You talk too much. As soon as Yang Yi finished speaking, Yang Yi was already in front of Yu Wushuang. Just as before, he didn't utilize any techniques and just smashed his fist forward. Speed and strength. That's what Yang Yi was using right now. One who hasn't comprehended fist intent like you actually dares to swing your fist in front of me? Fierce fist intent suddenly erupted from within her, and it seemed like material energy as it pressed down towards Yang Yi. Yang Ye's attack speed instantly slowed down when it descended upon him. 10th level fist intent. Mu Ling and the others were astounded because Yu Wushuang merely possessed 9th level fist intent when she fought the previous genius who was ranked at the 10th position on the hallowed rankings. However, she'd actually attained the 10th level in a short period of a month. Isn't her natural talent a little too terrifying? Will Yang Man be able to win? Mu Ling's brows were pressed together tightly because she felt that Yang Ye's chances of winning were really not huge. After all, he seemed to have not revealed any intent until this point, and profounders who'd comprehended intent weren't just a little bit stronger than those who hadn't. The calmest and most composed here was Fu Jingxian, because no one here had a greater understanding of how terrifying Yang Yi was. He was in existence who'd killed the last expert who was ranked at the 3rd position on the hallowed rankings, and he'd even killed half-saints. If there was someone in the younger generation of the hallowed grounds who could fight Yang Yi, then it was only the top 2 monstrous geniuses on the hallowed rankings. As for the rest, only death awaited them if they fought him. Xianxia's speed had slowed down, but it didn't take long for his speed to increase once more. Moreover, it was growing quicker and quicker. This caused Yu Wushuang's expression to change slightly, but she quickly calmed herself and blasted her right fist against Xianxia's punch. She'd never feared anyone in a fist fight. Bang! Yu Wushuang took around 10 steps back while Xiangxia merely took a single step back. The difference in their strengths was obvious. The profounders of Snow's Lament who were still excited just a moment ago seemed as if they'd been doused with cold water, and they instantly froze on the spot. Meanwhile, Mu Ling was first stunned, and then she was overjoyed. Of course, her eyes revealed dense bewilderment and shock. How could young man who hasn't comprehended any intent be able to repulse Yu Wushuang who has comprehended 10th level fist intent? The minds of many in the surroundings had turned blank. On the other hand, Yu Wushuang's face was covered in shock, because she hadn't imagined that she would actually lose in a collision of fists. Moreover, her enemy was someone with a cultivation that was lower than her and hadn't comprehended any intent. Xianxia glanced at his fist, and he noticed that there were a few sunken areas on his fist. They were marks that Yu Wushuang's gloves had left behind. He raised his head to look at Yu Wushuang, and his gaze descended onto her gloves before he said, "Those gloves of yours aren't bad. I want them. Do you think I would give them to you?" Yu Wushuang spoke coldly. "I'm not asking, I'm taking." As soon as he finished speaking, Xianxia's figure vanished on the spot again. Yu Wushuang's expression changed drastically because Xianxia was in front of her, and just like before, his fist was smashing down towards her. With the lesson she learned from their last collision still lingering in her mind, Yu Wushuang didn't dare hold back this time. The profound energy and 10th level fist intent within her surged madly into her fist, and then she used all the strength in her body to smash her fist against Xianxia's fist. Bang! Another head-on collision. The spectators watched as Yu Wushuang moved backward repeatedly from the impact. However, Xianxia hadn't moved backward at all this time. Not only that, he even pressed forward and instantly arrived in front of Yu Wushuang before launching another punch. Bang! Yu Wushuang was blasted backward once more. After that, the spectators witnessed a scene that almost caused their eyeballs to pop out. Yu Wushuang didn't even have the ability to fight back before Xianxia's attacks, and she was completely suppressed. Only a few breaths of time passed before she'd taken a few hundred steps back, and she was still moving backwards. Yu Wushuang was a monstrous genius ranked at the 10th position on the hallowed rankings. Countless people in the surroundings were shocked, puzzled, and astounded. Who exactly is that fellow young man? Bang! Yu Wushuang wasn't able to resist him any longer, and she was blasted flying and smashed open a huge crater on the ground. Moreover, the spectators noticed that Yu Wushuang's hands were trembling right now. Yes, they were trembling. How strong was Xianxia's body? In short, if a half-saint sealed his strength and fought Xianxia with only the strength of his body, then Xianxia could beat that half-saint around like a punching bag. If it was merely in terms of physical strength and defense, then he'd completely surpassed the half-saint realm. Yu Wushuang's accomplishments in the fist were extraordinary indeed, and it was especially so for her 10th level fist intent. However, she'd encountered Xianxia, so she was bound to meet a tragic end, because her fist intent was completely useless against Xianxia. What a joke! Would Xianxia, who possessed first-level heaven-rank sword intent, fear the suppression of her earth-rank fist intent? Yu Wushuang struggled to get up, but a foot stomped down against her stomach, causing her to lay back down. Xianxia looked down at her and said, "Didn't you want to smash my head apart? But it seems like you can't accomplish that." As he spoke, Xianxia grabbed Yu Wushuang's hands, and then exerted a little force. Ah! A shrill cry of misery resounded because Xianxia pulled off her fists. The hearts of all the spectators felt cold when they witnessed this scene, and their gazes towards Xianxia were filled with fear. Xianxia nodded lightly as he gazed at the dark gold gloves in his grasp, and he said, "Not bad. They're at the Dao rank. I can make do with them. There's a spatial ring here as well. Not bad, I'll take it. I'll see what's in it later." I don't have time for it now. You're dead. Yu Wushuang gazed resentfully at Yang Yi while her entire body trembled violently from the intense pain she experienced. You're dead no matter who you are. The Master of Snow's Lament won't let you go. He won't let you go. Really? Yang Yi smiled. Suddenly, his smile became savage as he kicked forcefully with his right leg. Yu Wushuang's eyes instantly opened wide as his foot struck her stomach and kicked her flying. In the end, her figure smashed against the walls of the tower. Bang! Yu Wushuang's body was transformed into a pile of mush. Yu Wushuang, the 10th ranked on the hallowed rankings, was dead. She died just like that. The profounders of Snow's Lament turned pale, and they couldn't help but take a few steps back while they gazed at Yang Yi as if they were looking at a demon. Yang Yi raised his head and looked at the tower as he said, "That fellow, the Master of Snow's Lament. I know you're probably in there. I want to tell you that since you're dared to ask someone to kill me, then you have to pay the price for it. I'll give you two options. The first is to disband Snow's Lament, and I'll leave immediately. The second is that I'll challenge the members of Snow's Lament, one after the other, and I'll kill all of them until Snow's Lament vanishes completely. I choose the third option." A voice resounded from the top of the tower. "I'll kill you. Then come at me." Yang Ye's voice resounded. As soon as Yang Yi finished speaking, a man who wore a pure white robe and a white mask appeared before Yang Yi. The spectators in the surroundings felt a strand of indescribable coldness assault them once he arrived here. At the same time, they noticed to their astonishment that the space beneath the white-robed man's feet and around him had actually started to freeze. Is he the Master of Snow's Lament? Such a thought couldn't help but appear in the minds of many. The reason they weren't certain of his identity was because the Master of Snow's Lament had always been mysterious, and even some of Snow's Lament's higher-ups hadn't seen the Master's true appearance. Of course, regardless of whether he was Snow's Lament's master, he was absolutely not an ordinary figure. The white-robed man flicked his finger, and a pearl of blood flew forward and descended upon the agreement. Since my Snow's Lament was established, over 10,000 years have passed. It has experienced glory and decline, but it has never been humiliated. You're the first to dare come to our headquarters and humiliate Snow's Lament. Trust me, you'll be the last as well." Yang Yi replied, "Actually, there really isn't any great enmity between me and Snow's Lament. Unfortunately, the members of your Snow's Lament act like idiots, and I truly had no choice but to kill them, because they would think I fear them if I didn't kill them, and then they would ceaselessly look for trouble with me. Since it's like that, then it's better to solve the problem at its roots. The members of Snow's Lament can die, but its dignity can't be lost or insulted," said the white-robed man. Yang Yi clenched his fists slowly and said, "Today, I'm going to cause their deaths, and I'm going to make Snow's Lament be utterly disgraced. Why don't you give it a try?" As soon as the white-robed man spoke, the space around Yang Yi suddenly started to freeze. It froze extremely quickly, and merely an instant passed before the space in an area of 30 m around Yang Yi had frozen. Moreover, the temperature in the surroundings had suddenly plummeted, and it caused some comparatively weaker profounders to be instantly frozen on the spot. Countless spectators were horrified. At this moment, even Fu Jingxian revealed a rare solemn expression because the coldness that the white-robed man emanated caused her blood and profound energy to be on the verge of freezing. Will Yang Yi be able to deal with him? She would naturally be confident in Yang Ye's ability if he could use the sword. But the problem was that he absolutely couldn't right now. After all, he would be instantly exposed if he did. At that time, Yang Yi would definitely die because this was the Hallowed Hall's base. So, could Yang Yi deal with that mysterious white-robed man while he couldn't use the sword? Bang! Meanwhile, the ice that frozen Yang Yi on the spot had suddenly exploded apart, and then Yang Yi shot forward explosively in the white-robed man's direction. Yang Ye's speed was extremely quick, and it was quick to the point many people here could only see a shadow. But it wasn't long before his speed slowed down at a visible speed, because the space around him had actually been frozen into a thick wall of ice, and it was exactly that ice wall which obstructed him and slowed him down. In next to no time, Yang Yi stopped moving because layers of thick ice walls had formed all around him, and they were ceaselessly pressing down upon him, causing him to be unable to speed up at all. Your body is very strong, and even I am not confident in my ability to break through your defenses. However, I can seal you in ice. As soon as he spoke, Yang Yi instantly felt the temperature around him decline, and the density of those ice walls grew even greater. A trace of seriousness appeared on Yang Ye's eyes because he felt that the blood within him was actually showing signs of freezing. This time, he had no choice but to admit that the hallowed halls was really filled with countless experts. Of course, the white-robed man was dreaming if he thought that he could kill Yang Yi with such an attack. The violet, profound energy within him started surging madly, and then it spread through his entire body. The coldness in his body started to be alleviated, and his temperature gradually rose back up. Freeze me? You're not strong enough. Yang Yi suddenly smashed his fists forward, and the formidable force they carried surged forward. In an instant, the walls of ice before him were blasted away as if they were swept away by a tsunami, and they were instantly transformed into bits. Bang! Yang Yi suddenly stomped the ground with his right foot and shot forward like a cannonball. This time, the newly formed ice walls hadn't even had the chance to obstruct him because Yang Ye's hands weren't staying idle throughout his charge. He was swinging them ceaselessly, and wave after wave of force swept out from them and instantly blasted those ice walls into pieces. Yang Yi arrived before the white-robed man and smashed his fist forward, and the powerful force it contained cracked the space around his fist apart. An ice shield suddenly appeared in front of the white-robed man. Bang! Yang Ye's fist had just come into contact with the ice shield when Yang Ye's expression changed violently, and then the spectators watched with astonishment as Yang Ye's figure was blasted over 1 kilometer away. Cough! Yang Yi coughed intensely a few times, and then he looked down at his right hand. At this moment, his right hand was trembling violently. He took a deep breath before he raised his head to look at the white-robed man. That's a very good ice shield. It's actually even able to reflect my attack back to me. He hadn't been blasted flying because of the white-robed man, and it was because of his own strength. At the moment he struck the ice shield, he noticed that his entire strength had been reflected back to him. If he didn't possess a powerful body, then he would have died from the force of his own fist. Your physical strength and defenses are even stronger than some of the demons, devils, or even stone men that I've met. The white-robed man spoke slowly. However, you're crippled while I have this ice shield by my side. Is that so? Yang Yi withdrew the pair of dark golden gloves which he took from Yu Wushuang just now, wore them, and issued a command in his heart. Countless dragon scales instantly formed on his fists that were protected by the gloves. Yang Ye's figure shot towards the white-robed man again. Just like before, he smashed his fist forward again. The white-robed man didn't dodge, and he just used the ice shield to defend himself again. Bang! This time, Yang Yi wasn't blasted flying, but he still took a few steps back in succession. Of course, most importantly, the white-robed man had been blasted a few steps back in succession as well. Both of them moved almost 300 m back before they finally stopped themselves. But in the next moment, Yang Yi shot forward again and smashed his fist forward once more. Just like that, both of them were blasted back over and over again. But Yang Yi pressed forward continuously and blasted his fist forward over and over again. It wasn't long before the spectators realized that the white-robed man couldn't hold on for long because an extremely obvious streak of scarlet red was flowing down from behind his mask. Yang Yi was able to resist the powerful force that was reflected by the shield, but the white-robed man couldn't resist the powerful blast that came from it. So, Yang Ye's frenzied attacks hadn't just completely suppressed the white-robed man. It had even caused him to suffer severe internal injuries. This time, Yang Yi appeared before the white-robed man again. However, his fist suddenly relaxed when it was about to smash against the ice shield, and it transformed into a claw that grabbed the shield. The white-robed man was horrified. He naturally knew what Yang Yi intended to do, so he hurriedly started controlling the shield, and it trembled violently under his control. Moreover, it even shot countless blades of ice at Yang Yi. Yang Yi frowned from suffering these attacks at such a close range. because those blades of ice were actually capable of inflicting pain on him. However, it wasn't long before excitement appeared in his eyes instead. Because the shield was a precious treasure, Xianxia shouted fiercely as he grabbed the shield with his left hand as well, and then he forcefully lifted it up and tossed it into the primordial pagoda. Just like the Mage Force shield, it fell completely silent upon entering the primordial pagoda. With the shield gone, Xianxia had no further obstructions, so he immediately shot forward and smashed his fists against the white-robed man's stomach. Bang! The white-robed man was blasted flying. He gazed at Xianxia with horror while flying through the air and said, "How could you possibly accomplish that? That ice shield was a Tao artifact that's linked to me, and it even has an ice spirit as its equipment spirit. How could you have possibly?" Meanwhile, Xianxia appeared in front of him while a savage expression appeared on Xianxia's face. "I can't be bothered to give you an explanation." As soon as he finished speaking, Xianxia stomped his right foot against the white-robed man's stomach. Bang! The white-robed man's figure was blasted flying before crashing against the wall of the tower. Just like Yu Wuxia, he was transformed into a pile of mush. Xianxia gestured with his right hand, and a spatial ring made of icy flew out from the must. He placed it within the primordial pagoda before he glanced at the other members of Snow's Lament. Who else? Who else? It was absolutely domineering. In the eyes of the spectating profounders, Xianxia was definitely domineering. He'd killed members of Snow's Lament, attacked its headquarters, and even killed Yu Wuxia and that white-robed man. In their opinion, no matter who young man was, his name would spread throughout the hallowed grounds from today onward. Yes, the hallowed grounds and not just the hallowed halls. At this moment, the most excited person here was Mu Ling, because Lunar Right Hall would have an extraordinary genius from today onward. At this moment, she felt extremely fortunate that she hadn't shrunk back earlier. On the contrary, Gong Jian was quite regretful. He didn't look very favorably upon Xianxia just now, and it should be said that he didn't think very highly of Xianxia. After all, while Xianxia was strong, Xianxia's existence was insignificant to them. Yet now, Gong Jian shook his head, but he felt fortunate in his heart as well. He felt fortunate that while he hadn't been able to recruit Xianxia, he hadn't formed a bad relationship with Xianxia either. At this moment, he finally realized that this fellow who stood before him was a complete and utter madman. No one from Snow's Lament answered Xianxia, and no one dared to either. After all, the 10th on the hallowed rankings, and the extremely strong white-robed man had both been killed. So, they would only be giving their lives away if they accepted Xianxia's challenge. Xianxia said, "Is there no one else? Then I'll start killing one by one." The members of Snow's Lament were horrified. This conflict stops right now. Suddenly, the voice of a woman resounded, and then a figure appeared in front of Xianxia. The expressions of everyone here changed drastically when they saw her, and even Xianxia's expression had changed. Because he'd met her before, and he'd even fought her. Silver hair, a linen dress, bare feet. Nether Maiden, the first on the hallowed rankings. Nether Maiden, who was ranked at the first position on the hallowed rankings, had always been an elusive figure. So, they'd never imagined that she would show herself here. Moreover, it seemed like she was here to help Snow's Lament. Exactly how powerful is Snow's Lament to actually make Nether Maiden step forward for it? At this moment, Snow's Lament grew even more mysterious in their eyes. Xianxia hadn't expected that Nether Maiden would suddenly appear here. She was the strongest opponent he'd ever met, so he would have no chance to defeat her in battle without his sword. The members of Snow's Lament insulted both you and your friend, and then they sent their forces to kill you. They are in the wrong, but you've killed a few hundred of their members. No matter how severe an offense it was, they've paid enough. So, let the matter rest, all right? Nether Maiden's voice was very calm and wasn't commanding at all. This caused many people in the surroundings to be surprised. Even though the strength Xianxia revealed was very formidable and terrifying, none of them felt that he could fight her. So, many were extremely surprised when she spoke with him as if she was discussing the matter with him. Xianxia replied, "Are you the master of Snow's Lament?" She shook her head slightly and said, Someone else is its master. I know what you're trying to figure out. I haven't stepped forward for their sake. I've come here for your sake. For me. Xianxia frowned and said, What do you mean? Nether Maiden replied, You'll understand in the future. Besides that, Snow's lament isn't as weak as you think. Of course, you don't have to fear it with the strength you possess. However, it's best to stop now if you don't want to be ceaselessly plagued by trouble while you're in the city. Why? Xianxia was quite curious. She answered, Many elders and half-saints in the city came from Snow's lament, and many other clans and powers have complicated relationships with Snow's lament as well. To be honest, you aren't able to annihilate them with your strength. At least for now. Why tell me all of that? This was what Xianxia was the most curious about. You'll understand in the future. Her figure vanished once she finished speaking these words. Xianxia fell silent on the spot for a short while, and then he turned around and left in the end. It wasn't that what she said had terrified him. It was that he was fully aware that it was impossible for him to continue slaughtering all of these profounders from Snow's lament. After all, someone would definitely step forward and stop him by force if he continued. Moreover, he didn't want to continue wasting time here. The members of Snow's lament heaved sighs of relief when they saw Xianxia turn around and leave. Mu Ling heaved a sigh of relief as well because it would definitely be impossible to resolve the matter if it continued. Along with the departure of Xianxia's group, the danger that Snow's lament faced was resolved for now. As for whether Snow's lament would take revenge, that was something only Snow's lament knew. At the same time, the news of Xianxia challenging Snow's lament on his own instantly swept through the city like a storm. On the very same day, everyone knew that a formidable body refiner had appeared within the city. Young man. Such an ancient method of cultivation like body refinement had appeared once more in the public eye, and it allowed many to realize how terrifying a body refiner was. Of course, even more wanted to know Young Man's true identity, so countless underground organizations started to investigate Xianxia. Mu Ling led Xianxia to Lunar Right Hall's headquarters. It was a luxurious palace that was even larger and more luxurious than the headquarters of Snow's lament. Moreover, it was more heavily guarded as well. Because Xianxia had sensed a few dozen consciousnesses that were extremely strong sweeping towards him when he entered. All of them were at the 5th rank of the monarch realm at least. As soon as they entered the hall, a woman came over to welcome them. She was around 30 years of age, her face was bright like the full moon, her features delicate like dew, and her figure was curvaceous and well-proportioned. Moreover, she emanated a very alluring and mature aura. You're Young Man, right? The woman walked over to Xianxia and smiled. You challenged Snow's lament on your own? And you even killed Wuxia and that white-robed man, right? You probably aren't aware of his identity. Of course, many may not be aware as well. He's one of the 2 war generals of Snow's lament, and his strength is something that is even impossible for the geniuses on the 8th or even 7th ranking on the hallowed halls to overcome. Who are you? Asked Xianxia. The woman smiled. I actually forgot to introduce myself. I'm Cho Yenmei, Lunar Right Hall's Vice Hall Master. I'm sorry, the Hall Master should have been here to greet you. Unfortunately, it couldn't be helped because the Hall Master isn't here, so I had to represent her instead. I hope you don't me. Of course I don't. Xianxia smiled, and then he spoke seriously. I told Mu Ling before this that I don't really like being bound. So? Cho Yenmei smiled and said, I understand. I really do, because I don't like being bound and controlled as well. You'll enjoy full freedom in Lunar Right Hall. Actually, it isn't just you. Most members of Lunar Right Hall enjoy the same treatment. We're mainly gathered together to avoid being bullied and to unite when completing missions. In short, your worries are unnecessary. Of course, if Lunar Right Hall is in danger or its members are in danger, and you have the ability to help, then you must lend a hand. Xianxia thought for a moment and said, That's all right. Cho Yenmei's smile grew wider when she heard this, and then she withdrew a white card which was made of crystal and passed it to Xianxia. This is a point card, and there are 5,000 points within it. Moreover, 500 points will be added to this card every single month from now onward. Oh, look at me and my memory. I forgot to tell you that you'll be one of our Lunar Right Hall's 3 guardians. and your status is only inferior to the hallmaster and the other 2 vice hallmasters. A wisp of envy flashed through Mu Ling's eyes when she gazed at the card in Yang Ye's hand. After all, she would have to complete missions for at least a year to accumulate 5,000 points. A point card? Yang Yi was delighted and didn't refuse it. He took the card from Chou Yenmei and said, "Thank you." After all, the reason he'd come to the ancient city of Hallows was for the sake of these points. Chou Yenmei smiled and said, "As Lunar Right Hall's guardian, you'll have a room of your own here. However, you have to pay 50 points on a monthly basis for it. Of course, you can live outside if you like. In any case, it's up to you. You can ask Mu Ling if you have any questions. She'll tell you everything besides her own personal secrets. I have other matters to attend to, so I won't be accompanying you any longer." She turned around and left as soon as she finished speaking. Yang Yi raised his head and glanced at Chou Yenmei while a slight smile arose on the corners of his mouth. Even Lunar Right Hall had experts hidden within it, because his intuition told him that the woman's strength was even stronger than the white-robed man. Suddenly, Chou Yenmei stopped moving, and then she turned around and said, "I forgot to tell you that you're ranked at the 10th position on the Hallowed rankings now since you killed Yu Wushuang. You'll enjoy the benefits of obtaining 2,000 points every month, and you're even able to use those points to exchange for some unique cultivation techniques and combat techniques. Of course, the precondition is that you have sufficient points." Chou Yenmei's figure flashed and vanished on the spot once she was done. "I have a question," Yang Yi suddenly asked once Chou Yenmei left. "I'd thought the strength of those geniuses on the Hallowed rankings would far surpass Lunar Right Hall, the Alliance of Sabers and Swords, and Snow's Lament. But now it would seem like it isn't like that. Since all 3 groups in the city have members with strengths that surpass the geniuses on the Hallowed rankings, then why are they still so superior? Do you know about Yang Yi?" Mu Ling spoke abruptly. Yang Yi and Fu Jingxian were slightly stunned, and the corners of Yang Ye's mouth twitched as he said, "I've heard of him." "What? It's linked to him?" Mu Ling nodded in response and said, "The geniuses on the Hallowed rankings were actually very strong. Not to mention those few at the top. Just Sui Dengfeng wasn't someone that Yu Wushuang or that white-robed man could defeat. As for those ranked above Sui Dengfeng like He Lianqi, Yun Qingyao, Moixia, or Xiahou Xian, all of their strengths were truly formidable. Moreover, the words Hallowed rankings were truly superior before they left the hallowed grounds. Yet now..." When she spoke up to this point, Mu Ling shook her head and said, "The current geniuses on the Hallowed rankings are much weaker." Fu Jingxian glanced at Yang Yi and remained silent, because she understood what Mu Ling meant. Yang Yi had killed numerous geniuses who were ranked on the Hallowed rankings, and it caused a huge amount of vacancies to instantly appear on the Hallowed rankings. Since there were vacancies, there would naturally be people who took those positions. However, there was no one to stop them from seizing those positions. In that way, it was much easier for someone to take those positions, and it would naturally make them much weaker than their predecessors. "So it's my fault, huh?" The corners of Yang Ye's mouth twitched slightly, and then he said, "Right, Chou Yenmei said that I killed Yu Wushuang, so I'm ranked at the 10th position on the Hallowed rankings, and I would obtain 2,000 points every single month. Where do I go to claim them?" Mu Ling said, "There's a row of numbers on your point card. We call that the card number. You just have to register that card number at a brand of the Hallowed Halls, and they'll automatically add points into your card every single month. I'll do it for you later." "Thank you." Yang Yi smiled. Mu Ling replied, "It's nothing. You can come ask me if you have any questions about the Hallowed Halls. You fought for so long earlier, so I presume you have to recuperate now. I won't disturb you any longer." Mu Ling turned around and left once she finished speaking. "I'm going to see the Patriarch and the others." Fu Jingxian spoke abruptly. Yang Yi replied, "Be careful." Fu Jingxian nodded and left. After they left, Yang Yi went to the room that Lunar Right Hall had prepared for him. He closed the door and withdrew 2 spatial rings which belonged to Yu Wushuang and the white-robed man from before. There were cultivation techniques, combat techniques, and a bunch of random things in the spatial rings. Yang Yi naturally didn't attach any importance to those things, but there were 2 things that gave Yang Yi a pleasant surprise. They were point cards. Both Yu Wushuang and the white-robed man had a point card, and there were quite a bit of points within them. Yu Wushuang had 12,000 points while the white-robed man had 23,000 points. So, it totaled up to 35,000 points. Coupled with the 5,000 points which he just gained, he could use those points to gain a Dao rank technique. Of course, the greatest treasure he obtained today was that ice shield. Xianxia's room was instantly frozen in ice when he took the ice shield out of the primordial pagoda. At the same time, a fist-sized and pure white little object that was shaped like a tadpole flashed out from within the shield, and it shot towards the outside at a terribly swift speed. It was an ice spirit. Xianxia stretched out his hand and grabbed, and the ice spirit instantly stopped on the spot because a spatial wall had appeared around it. You can't flee. This ice shield strength would plummet without you. Xianxia grabbed it and forced it back into the shield. Of course, it resisted, but it was futile. Even though it was a natural treasure, it hadn't truly formed intelligence of its own. Moreover, he wouldn't fear it even if that had happened, unless it was capable of attaining a level similar to Shao Ying. Once the ice spirit was forced back into the shield, Xianxia instantly felt like the ice shield had come back to life like a person that had regained his soul. Xianxia couldn't help but fall into deep thought because of this, because it was the first time that he realized that natural treasures could be utilized in such a manner. In other words, couldn't the 9th Hell-Cold Gale he possessed be utilized in the same way? The 9th Hell-Cold Gale can improve speed. In other words, wouldn't it be able to multiply my speed if I added it to my shoes? He was wearing the stellar shuttle right now, but it seemed to be quite useless to him once he advanced into the monarch realm, because his own speed far surpassed it. So, he wondered what would happen if he added the 9th Hell-Cold Gale to the stellar shuttle. Xianxia was quite tempted, but he could only think about such a thing. After all, it wasn't something that could be merged at will. The reason he could merge the ice spirit into the ice shield was because there was a fusion point within the shield, and he was able to sense that the ice spirit and ice shield conformed to each other. That was why they could be fused. As for the stellar shuttle and 9th Hell-Cold Gale, in short, he had the desire yet lacked the ability. However, he believed that someone within the city could definitely accomplish it. Xianxia placed the matter of fusing the stellar shuttle and 9th Hell-Cold Gale aside, and his gaze descended onto the ice shield again. He had no doubt that its might and ability weren't inferior to the Mageforce shield, or it should be said that each excelled in their own way. The Mageforce shield could absorb energy attacks, and it could send the energy back. On the other hand, the ice shield could directly reflect physical attacks. Moreover, because the ice shield had that ice spirit within it, it had ice element attacks and a freezing effect. Such effects couldn't be underestimated. After all, even Xianxia's movements and speed were affected by the coldness emanated from the ice shield. Even though it didn't affect him severely, it was sufficient to display how terrifying it was. In short, his gains were very great this time. Xianxia started to recuperate after that. Just as Mu Ling had said, he'd exhausted a huge amount of strength during the battles with Yu Wushuang and the white-robed man. So, he had to recover to his peak state. After all, he didn't feel safe at all while he resided in the Hallowed Hall's territory. 2 days later, Xianxia left Lunar Right Hall and arrived at a place called the Technique Pavilion. As its name implied, it was where the Hallowed Halls stored its techniques, and anyone from the human race was permitted to enter it. Of course, the precondition was that person had points. The entrance fee was 100 points. That was naturally nothing to Xianxia. However, he truly understood what Fu Jingxian said that day. Everything in the Hallowed Halls really did require points. Indeed, he couldn't even eat without points. The pavilion had 4 floors. The first floor was filled with Earth rank techniques. The box of every single technique was labeled with the required points, and one could take them immediately if one possessed sufficient points. Of course, one could only take a copy. Xianxia glanced at them, and then the corners of his mouth twitched, because these Earth rank techniques required around 5,000 points. He suddenly noticed that the points he possessed seemed to be not much at all. Xianxia wasn't interested in Earth rank techniques at all, so he spent 200 points to ascend to the second floor. There were fewer people on the first floor, but there were much more on the second floor. Besides that, Yang Yi noticed that the second floor was many times larger than the first. It was a few dozen kilometers wide. Moreover, there were all sorts of black jade counters here, and there were at least 10,000 of them. Every single one of those counters had at least 10 techniques lying on them. In other words, there were at least 100,000 heaven rank techniques on the second floor. What was it like to have 100,000 heaven rank techniques? Even if all the heaven rank techniques throughout Profounder Continent were included, it still might not be able to amount to 100,000. Besides a few profounders, there were no guards here. But Yang Yi was very well aware that it was actually heavily guarded. Because no less than 5 consciousnesses had swept him when he arrived at the second floor, and they were at least half saints. That was also why he'd temporarily abandoned his intention to plunder this place. Yang Yi glanced at the jade counter by his side. There was a heaven rank combat technique right at the top, and a small row of words were written on it, 15,000 points. 15,000 points. Yang Yi felt he was getting poorer by the minute. Since the second floor stored heaven rank techniques, then the third should be where the Dao rank techniques were. This time, Yang Yi paid 500 points to ascend to the third floor. There were much lesser people here, and it was slightly smaller as well. However, it was still around 3 kilometers long and wide, and there were almost 1,000 jade counters on the floor. In other words, there were over 10,000 Dao rank techniques on this floor. Over 10,000. Yang Yi couldn't help but gasp at 10,000 Dao rank techniques. Did those Saint Realm experts from 100,000 years ago move all the Dao rank techniques of Profounder Continent here? At this moment, he finally understood why the younger generation of the Hallowed Grounds far surpassed Profounder Continent. What a joke! If the Hallowed Grounds was still inferior to Profounder Continent when it possessed such resources, then they could really just kill themselves. Yang Yi glanced at the labels on those Dao rank techniques, and his eyelids twitched, because the cheapest required over 30,000 points. In other words, he was merely able to exchange his points for a single Dao rank technique. Even though Dao rank techniques are very good, but... Yang Yi gazed at the fourth floor. The first floor was filled with Earth rank techniques, the second was filled with Heaven rank techniques, and Dao rank techniques filled the third. So what about the fourth? It made him wonder if techniques above the Dao rank existed. Yang Yi carried such questions in his heart as he walked over to the fourth level. This time he paid 3,000 points. 3,000. Even Yang Yi couldn't help but feel that it hurt. However, he still chose to ascend to the fourth floor because he was very curious about what sort of techniques would be placed above the Dao rank. The space on the fourth floor was much smaller than the second and third floors. It was only around 30 m wide, and there were merely 3 jade counters. Moreover, there were only 5 scrolls on each of those counters. There were only 3 people here, a man and a woman. Both of them immediately looked at him when he arrived at the fourth floor, and their gazes carried a trace of surprise and curiosity. Yang Yi gazed at them as well. The man was around the age of 20. He was a handsome man with beautiful features and eyes that were filled with spirit. He wore a violet gold-colored robe. His hair hung loosely on his shoulders, and he emanated a dense scholarly aura. The woman's appearance couldn't be seen clearly because she was wearing a moon-white veil. Logically speaking, it would be impossible for a veil to obstruct Yang Ye's vision, but the veil succeeded. So, besides her seemingly icy cold eyes, Yang Yi wasn't able to discern the other parts of her face. Something worthy of mentioning was that the violet-robed man had a diagram of a crossed sword and saber on his left chest, while there was a diagram on the woman's left chest as well. That diagram was very familiar to Yang Yi because he had the exact same diagram on his left chest. She was a member of Lunar Right Hall. Her gaze descended onto Yang Ye's left chest, and a wisp of surprise flashed through her eyes when she saw the insignia there. Lunar Right Hall? Her voice was very gentle like the summer breeze. Yang Yi nodded, and then he walked over to them. Meanwhile, she said, "Why haven't I seen you before?" Yang Yi smiled and said, "I just joined, so it makes sense for you to have not." "So that's why." She nodded and said, "You're only at the second rank of the Monarch realm. The techniques here aren't suitable for you. Moreover, the points required for the techniques here are probably not something you can afford to pay." "I was just curious." Yang Yi chuckled. You've asked me 2 questions, so I can ask you some questions too, right? The woman was slightly stunned when she heard this. On the other hand, the violet-robed man revealed a strange smile instead, and he seemed like he was amused by the show playing out before him. The woman pondered deeply for a moment and said, "Go on." Xianxia said, "The first floor had earth rank techniques, the second had heaven rank techniques, and Tao rank techniques filled the third. Then what about the fourth?" He glanced at those jade counters. Unfortunately, they were enveloped by a mysterious force, so he couldn't see through them at all. The fourth naturally contains saint techniques. It wasn't the woman who spoke these words but the violet-robed man. It's very normal for you to be unaware of the saint rank, because ordinary people and even those fellows on the hallowed rankings would find it very difficult to obtain saint rank techniques. It isn't just them, even some half-saints find them difficult to obtain. Because it's so difficult to obtain, so the people of the world are only aware of the Tao rank. The saint rank, huh? Xianxia's eyes narrowed slightly. He hadn't expected that a saint rank actually existed above the Tao rank. Of course, he'd never imagined that the hallowed halls would actually possess so many. Exactly how terrifying is the true strength of the hallowed halls? You really shouldn't have come here, the violet-robed man spoke abruptly. Your cultivation is too low. You won't be able to cultivate it even if you obtain one. Not to mention you, even a half-saint would probably find them difficult to cultivate successfully. Then aren't they just like decoration now? Xianxia chuckled. The violet-robed man shook his head and said, "One person succeeded at cultivating a saint rank technique, and she's only at the exalt realm." "Who?" "That freak at the first position on the hallowed rankings." A wisp of bitterness arose on the corners of the violet-robed man's mouth. "Throughout the hallowed grounds, she's the only person beneath the half-saint realm who has succeeded in cultivating a saint rank technique. Moreover, she has succeeded at more than one. Nether Maiden." The shock in Xianxia's eyes lessened slightly because he felt that it was quite normal if it was her. After all, to a certain extent, her level of genius was even more terrifying than in Nanjing. "Since both of you can't cultivate them, then what are you doing here?" asked Xianxia. "Waiting for someone," said the woman. She added, "Nether Maiden. For what?" Xianxia was like a curious child. Meanwhile, the man chuckled and said, "Qingfeng, this new member of your lunar right hall is really interesting. Let me tell you, we're waiting here for her, so that we can determine how huge the gap between us is. Isn't that simple?" Xianxia said, "Just challenge her." The corners of the man's mouth twitched, and then he laughed bitterly. "We'll be bashed up," Xianxia replied. "But you won't die." The corners of the violet-robed man's mouth twitched fiercely again, and then he pointed at Xianxia and said, "Hey, there's no point in continuing with that act." "What act?" Xianxia frowned. He pointed at the woman and said, "It's understandable that you don't know her. After all, she's always elusive. However," he pointed at himself and said, "Don't tell me that you don't even recognize me." Xianxia gazed carefully at him and said, "I really don't." "Fuck." He pointed a finger at Xianxia while his lips trembled from the rage he felt. "You actually don't even recognize me? Qin Dai? You, did you come out from a cave? Qingfeng, don't you stop me. I'm gonna fight him in a one-on-one battle. One-on-one. She's here." Meanwhile, the woman spoke abruptly. Qin Dai instantly fell silent, and he recovered his calm and composed bearing from before. Xianxia turned around and saw that a woman had suddenly appeared there. She has silver hair, wore a linen dress, and her feet were bare. It was Nether Maiden. Nether Maiden, the #1 monstrous genius on the hallowed rankings. Nether Maiden. Xianxia and the others revealed solemn expressions on their faces when they saw her, because their strengths were even sufficient for them to instantly notice an ant around them. However, they hadn't noticed her arrival at all. The most terrifying part was that even if she was standing right before them right now, they still couldn't sense her aura. It was like there was no one in front of them. Nether Maiden's eyes were pitch black, so others couldn't see the expression in her eyes at all. However, Both the violet-robed man and the other woman were able to notice that Nether Maiden's gaze had descended onto the seemingly ordinary fellow who stood by their side. This made them feel rather surprised, but they were even more surprised when she nodded slightly to him. "That's a greeting." Both of their eyes instantly opened wide. Yang Yi was slightly stunned when he saw her greet him. He hadn't expected that she would actually greet him, but while he didn't understand why she did that, he still nodded in response. After all, he respected those who respected him. Nether Maiden's figure floated off and instantly arrived before the jade counter at the center. Meanwhile, a blue barrier of light suddenly appeared before the counter. Yang Yi noticed that both the violet-robed man and the woman's bodies had instantly tensed up when the barrier of light appeared, and they stared fixedly at it. Yang Yi was quite curious, so he looked over as well. The three of them watched as Nether Maiden raised her hand slowly, and then she waved her hand lightly against the barrier of light. The barrier of light trembled violently, and then countless fine cracks started spreading like a spiderweb. She waved her hand again. Crack. This time, the cracks on the barrier instantly spread further, and then it was on the verge of shattering. At this moment, she waved her hand again. Bang! They watched as the barrier of light exploded apart, and it transformed into countless blue specks that fell to the ground. The violet-robed man and the other woman exchanged glances, and there was dense bitterness and helplessness in their eyes. After the barrier of light shattered, Nether Maiden withdrew a point card and lightly swiped it against the top of the jade counter. After that, a black scroll appeared in her hand. At this moment, Yang Yi was shocked, extremely shocked. He wasn't shocked because she'd blasted that barrier of light apart. He was shocked because he saw the label on that black scroll. 200,000 points. How costly was 200,000 points? It was a few times more costly than a Dao rank technique. Are Saint rank techniques that terrifying? Yang Yi grew even more curious about the Saint rank techniques. He didn't know if the mortal sword within the Tri-Apex sword technique he'd cultivated was a Dao rank or Saint rank technique. The reason he didn't know was mainly because he'd never laid eyes on a Saint rank technique. Even though he'd clashed with Nether Maiden that day, both of them hadn't fought seriously. So, while she'd cultivated Saint rank techniques, he hadn't witnessed their might. Nether Maiden glanced at the scroll, put it away, and then turned around and walked towards the stairway. She suddenly stopped when she arrived at the stairs, and then she turned around and gazed at Yang Yi. "I accept a mission, and it's slightly difficult, but its rewards aren't bad. It'll provide a reward of 400,000 points once it's completed. Are you interested?" The violet-robed man and the woman were instantly stunned on the spot. They'd never imagined that Nether Maiden would actually invite this seemingly ordinary fellow to complete a mission with her. My God, that's Nether Maiden, the first on the hallowed rankings. The reason Qin Dai and Qingfeng were shocked was mainly because they'd never heard of Nether Maiden taking others with her when she completed missions, because she usually dealt with them herself. Yet now, she'd actually invited someone. Their gazes descended onto Yang Yi once more, and they stared fixedly at him as if they wanted to see through him. Yang Yi was quite surprised. He hadn't expected that she would invite him to head out on a mission. At this moment, he felt that something was off because the feeling she gave him since they met in the hallowed grounds was like she knew him. It was quite an absurd feeling because if she did recognize him, then he would have been annihilated by the hallowed halls a long time ago. That was the main reason why Yang Yi was bewildered. If she doesn't recognize me, then why is she constantly being nice to me? Could it be that she was shocked by the strength I revealed earlier? But that's clearly impossible. Yang Yi thought for quite a while before he said, "How many points can I get?" Even though he didn't know why she was doing this, he'd decided to go on that mission with her. Firstly, he really did need points, and he needed a huge amount, because he needed 100,000 points at least to enter the pagoda of confinement. Secondly, he wanted to get close to her and see what her true strength was like. "It'll depend on your own strength," she replied. "I'll come for you 3 days from now." She vanished on the spot once she finished speaking. "Who are you?" Qin Dai suddenly walked over to Yang Yi once Nether Maiden left, and he stared fixedly at Yang Yi as he said, "Nether Maiden has never liked to talk with others. even if it's unseeing who's ranked at the second position on the hallowed rankings. But she actually invited you. Tell me, is there something between the two of you? Xianxia replied, believe me, I'll tell her what you just said. Qin Dai's face instantly fell, and then he smiled with embarrassment and said, I was joking. It was just a joke. Even though you don't seem too shabby, it's impossible for her to fall for you. When he noticed that Xianxia's expression was quite unsightly, Qin Dai hurriedly spoke with a serious expression on his face. Brother, who exactly are you? Don't tell me that you're just a passerby. That would be an insult to my intelligence. Young man, Xianxia said, as for why she invited me, I actually have no idea. I'll definitely ask her when we meet again. Your young man. Qin Dai was shocked. That young man who attacked Snow's Lament's headquarters and killed both Yu Wushuang and that white-robed vice-master of Snow's Lament? At this moment, there was shock and curiosity in Qingfeng's eyes, and she was sizing him up incessantly. Xianxia nodded. You're finished. Qin Dai chuckled and said, the master of Snow's Lament, Lu Yuxiao, will be back from the Netherworld Ocean in 2 days at most. At that time, he'll definitely come looking for you. Do you know who Lu Yuxiao is? You definitely don't. He seems very refined and gentle on the outside, but he's actually an extraordinary madman. You killed so many members of Snow's Lament and trampled upon its honor, so he'll definitely fight you to the death. When he spoke up to this point, Qin Dai paused for a moment and said, but there's no need to worry. There are those in this world who don't fear him, just like me. So, join my alliance of sabers and swords, and I'll deal with Lu Yuxiao for you. All right? Qin Dai. Meanwhile, the woman suddenly spoke coldly. Aren't you going a bit too far by trying to steal a member of my lunar right palace while I'm standing right here? Qin Dai's face twitched when he heard this, and then he shrugged. Qingfeng, I'm helping you. It's not like you're unaware of Lu Yuxiao's character. If you drive him to a corner, then he'll definitely fight your lunar right hall to the death. Why would I, Mu Qingfeng, fear him? Mu Qingfeng glanced coldly at Qin Dai, and then she turned to look at Xianxia. Since you're a member of my lunar right hall, then I'll deal with it for you, regardless of how severe it is. You're the master of lunar right hall? Xianxia was no fool. When he heard their conversation, he'd faintly guessed their identities. The woman should be the hall master of lunar right hall, while Qin Dai was probably the leader of the alliance of sabers and swords. You're absolutely right. Qin Dai chuckled. Standing right before you is the peerless and drop-dead gorgeous hall master of lunar right hall, Mu Qingfeng. As for me, I'm the handsome, elegant, refined, and loved leader of the alliance of sabers and swords, Qin Dai. They call me the Beast of Passion. The Beast. Xianxia was quite astounded. The Beast of Passion. Qin Dai's face darkened as he said, the Beast of Passion? Understand? It's a demon beast that's loved by all, and it's known for being amorous. Understand? I think that being called the Beast is much more suitable for you. Xianxia spoke in a very serious manner. Kid, let's go for a one-on-one battle. I'm going to fight you one-on-one. Qin Dai was furious, and he really intended to drag Xianxia out for a battle. Enough! Meanwhile, Qingfeng suddenly shouted and glanced at Qin Dai with displeasure. The latter puckered his lips and didn't speak again about fighting Xianxia. Mu Qingfeng gazed at Xianxia and said, we're leaving. What about you? Xianxia said, the two of you were waiting here just to see her blast that barrier of blue light apart? Mu Qingfeng nodded. Don't underestimate that barrier. It contains the energy of the laws, so ordinary people would find them utterly impossible to shatter. Even Nether Maiden spent almost an entire day to blast open the barrier a few months ago. Yet now, when she spoke up to this point, a wisp of bitterness appeared in her eyes, and she said, she actually used just 3 attacks to blast it apart. Such a speed of growth is truly too terrifying. What about the two of you? Xianxia suddenly asked. How many attacks do the two of you need to break it apart? Mu Qingfeng's gaze flickered when she heard this, yet she remained silent. Meanwhile, Qin Dai's countenance turned slightly unsightly, and his lips twitched as he said, let's not talk about that. Let's not talk about that. We'll meet again. As he spoke, he immediately vanished down the stairs. Yang Yi was speechless. Mu Qingfeng glanced at Yang Yi and said, Lu Yuxiao will return in a few days. Don't leave Lunar Right Palace when he does. He isn't someone you can deal with right now. Mu Qingfeng's figure flashed and vanished down the stairs as well. Yang Yi walked over to a counter once they left. In an instant, a barrier of light appeared and obstructed him. Yang Yi clenched his right fist and swiftly smashed it forward. Bang! The barrier of light trembled violently while some cracks appeared on it. Yang Yi smashed his fist forward again, and he launched over 50 punches in succession within an instant. Bang! Suddenly, the barrier of light exploded into pieces. Yang Yi gazed at the shattered barrier of light as he spoke softly. It wasn't that difficult. Yang Yi didn't look at the technique behind the barrier because it was pointless when he had no points. He just left the technique pavilion instead. However, he was stopped by a few men when he just walked out of its doors. The man who led the group walked over to Yang Yi, sized Yang Yi up, and then spoke coldly. You're that fellow young man, right? Fu Jingxian is in our hands. Come with us if you want her to stay alive. A hand immediately grabbed the man's throat. And then Yang Yi gazed at the man whose countenance had turned ghastly pale. You're threatening me? He suddenly squeezed down as he spoke. Crack. The man's neck was broken, and there were no further signs of vitality from him. He died with his eyes wide open. Even until the moment that he died, he still didn't believe that he would have his neck broken from just speaking a few words. At this moment, all the others who came here with the man had their eyes wide open as well. And besides shock, there was even more terror in their eyes. It was just a few words. Yet he was killed just like that? Does he love to kill? Yang Yi hated threats the most. It would be a different situation if his strength was insufficient, but if it was under the circumstances that his strength was sufficient, then he wouldn't hesitate to kill anyone who dared to threaten him. He knew that since they'd captured Fu Jingxian, and then came looking for him, it was obvious that he was their objective. Even though he didn't know what they wanted, he didn't like it when people played such tricks. In his opinion, since they'd started to scheme against him, then they were his enemy, and the way he usually treated his enemies was to kill as many as he could. Didn't you want me to follow you? Lead the way. Yang Yi glanced at the remaining fellows here with an icy cold gaze, and it caused them to be unable to help but shiver. They seemed to intend to throw some threats at him, but their mouths just wouldn't open when they looked at him, and they had no choice but to lead the way. Young man. Meanwhile, a familiar voice resounded from the side. Yang Yi stopped moving, turned around, and saw Mu Ling walking towards him. What's going on here? Mu Ling glanced at Yang Yi and the others, and then glanced at the corpse at the side before she immediately frowned. Yang Yi replied, They've taken Fu Jingxian, and I'm their target. Mu Ling's face fell while a wisp of ghastly killing intent flashed through her eyes. After all, Fu Jingxian was a member of Lunar Right Hall in the end, yet they'd actually dared to capture a member of Lunar Right Hall. That was an insult to Lunar Right Hall. Their expressions changed when they noticed the killing intent in Mu Ling's eyes, and one of them hurriedly said, Young Miss Mu Ling, it's a misunderstanding, a misunderstanding. Our young master didn't capture young Miss Fu. He just invited her to be a guest at the estate. Moreover, just like her, we're merely inviting him over as well. We're not trying to take him there by force. What happened earlier was just a misunderstanding, a misunderstanding. Who's your young master? Asked Mu Ling. He replied, Man Shi. Mu Ling's expression changed when she heard this and said, Let's go. Fu Jingxian is in danger. She flashed towards the distance while she spoke. Yang Ye's face fell when he heard this, and then he stomped his right foot on the ground and shot after her like a cannonball. In next to no time, both of them arrived at an estate. Mu Ling was just about to enter when she suddenly stopped, and then she hesitated before she said, Young man, you have to stay calm no matter what happens later. It isn't just related to you and Fu Jingxian, it's related to our Lunar Right Hall as well. So, allow me to deal with it, all right? As soon as she's fine. Yang Ye's face was slightly gloomy. There really wasn't any deep relationship between him and Fu Jingxian, and they couldn't even be considered friends. However, no matter what, she'd come to the ancient city of Hallows with him. Moreover, if she hadn't sent him a voice transmission to notify him that the patriarch of the fire spirit race intended to utilize a formation against him, then he would have fallen into an extremely disadvantaged state. It was even to the extent that his life might have been in danger. Besides that, they'd captured Fu Jingxian because of him. In other words, they were targeting him, and Fu Jingxian had merely been dragged into it. Mu Ling sighed lightly when she heard him, and then she waved her right hand. A gust of wind blew over and blasted the door into pieces. Whip, 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 whip. They'd only just entered when the sound of a whip striking against flesh entered into their ears, and it caused their expressions to grow even more gloomy. Bitch! You're absolutely lucky that young master she took a liking to you, yet you actually dared to refuse? Fu Jingxian, what are you trying to act for? Didn't you constantly change different partners every single day? What? You're trying to reform yourself now. An alluring woman in red dress held a black whip within a hall, and she was smiling coldly as she gazed at Fu Jingxian. At this moment, Fu Jingxian's limbs were nailed on the ground while blood flowed all around her. The most horrifying part was that her entire body was densely covered in scars that were made by a whip. A man was seated at the side while his upper body was completely bare, and it was covered in countless strange dark golden symbols. Besides that, an old man stood behind the man, and the old man's eyes were closed as if he was sleeping. Whip! The whip in the woman's hand descended once more towards Fu Jingxian. In an instant, blood sprayed while the smile on her face grew even more brilliant. Aren't women born for men to sleep with? Moreover, you've slept with countless men. So what if you sleep with one more? After all, it's an honor for young Master Shi to have taken a liking to you. Unfortunately, you don't know how to cherish such an honor. She swung the whip again while she spoke. However, the whip didn't descend onto Fu Jingxian because a hand had grabbed it. Meanwhile, the old man opened his eyes while a strange smile arose on the corners of the young man's mouth. Mu Ling's mind had instantly gone blank when she saw Fu Jingxian, and she shouted in her mind, "Shit!" At this moment, Fu Jingxian wasn't dead, but she was on the verge of it. Her violet dress had turned scarlet red. Most importantly, her face was completely covered in scars. Could be said that she was unrecognizable. Yang Yi gazed at Fu Jingxian for a short while before he took a deep breath, and then placed his palm against her stomach. His violet profound energy flower slowly into her body, and it wasn't long before she seemed to be doing slightly better. She slowly opened her eyes, gazed at him and spoke softly, "Sorry, I dragged you into trouble again." Yang Yi shook his head and said, "It's I who dragged you into this. Don't fight them. Just take it as doing something for your own good. All right?" Fu Jingxian's weak voice carried a pleasing tone. She was very clearly aware that if Yang Yi fought them, then his life would definitely be in danger if he didn't expose his true strength. After all, there were half-saints here. But if he didn't expose his true strength, then it would be impossible for him to defeat a half-saint. "Don't worry, I won't do something I'm not confident in." Yang Yi helped her up and sent her to Mu Ling before he said, "Take her and leave." Mu Ling took Fu Jingxian and said, "Young man, don't do anything rash." There was a half-saint here, and she was very well aware that the Man estate had more than one half-saint. "You're young man." Meanwhile, the young man spoke abruptly. "I heard you relied on your physical strength and defense to kill you Wushuang and that white-robed vice-master of Snow's Lament? I'm very interested in you because I'm a body refiner as well. Or I should say that my Man clan has been a clan of body refiners for generations. I invited you here because of my curiosity and interest. As for your friend, I can only apologize. I only intended to have some fun with her. After all, she's quite pretty. But I never expected that she would actually resist and even cursed me to die without any descendants. So, I had no choice but to give her some slight punishment. Man Shi, Fu Jingxian belongs to my lunar right hall." Mu Ling spoke in a low voice. "Are you trying to declare war with lunar right hall? Little girl, don't try to use lunar right hall to scare us." Meanwhile, the old man behind Man Shi spoke abruptly. All of that's just child's play. Do you really think Lunar Right Hall is powerful? If it isn't out of consideration for some elders in the hallowed halls, your Lunar Right Hall can be destroyed in an instant. You! Mu Ling's face turned red from anger, but she was unable to refute it. Compared to these clans, the Lunar Right Hall was quite weak indeed, because it was only an organization formed by the younger generation, yet these clans had existed for tens of thousands of years or even 100,000 years. Just take her and go. Yang Yi spoke abruptly. Since you're here, then it won't be that easy for you to leave. It was the woman in a red dress who spoke those words. She suddenly jerked her hand with the intention of jerking the whip back, but she noticed to her astonishment that it felt like a mountain was pressing down on her whip. Not only had she been unable to pull it back, she'd almost been pulled over instead. Meanwhile, Yang Yi suddenly appeared in front of the woman. The latter was horrified and was just about to dodge, but a hand had wrapped around her neck. What are you doing? Let me go right now, or young master, she will chop you into pieces. She stared resentfully at Yang Yi, yet her eyes carried no terror. She was clearly completely unafraid. You won't object to letting them leave, right? Yang Yi was holding her neck yet spoke to Man Shi. I don't like being threatened. Man Shi gazed at Yang Yi and spoke calmly. Yang Yi nodded and then squeezed. Crack. Her head was immediately crushed off from her body, and a fountain of blood shot into the air. Yang Yi casually tossed her head away and said, Actually, I would have killed her regardless of whether you objected. The young man stood up slowly and said, You're courting death. When has the Man clan become so overbearing? Meanwhile, a voice resounded from outside, and then Mu Qingfeng and two old men entered the hall. The young man glanced at the Mu Qingfeng and the old men, and then he smiled. Oh my, two half-saints. I'm so afraid. Don't kill me, all right? As soon as he finished speaking, 3 more old men appeared here. For half-saints. See, we have 4 half-saints now, yet you only have 2. So all of you can leave your lives behind. Especially you, Mu Qingfeng. To be honest, I've been wanting to have fun with you for a very long time. Man, she seemed to have a slightly insane expression on his face. I'm taking him with me. Suddenly, another voice resounded, and then Nether Maiden appeared here. She glanced at Man Shi and the others, and then her gaze descended onto the old man behind Man Shi and said, Do you dare to object? Do you dare to object? These words were certainly overbearing, especially when it was an Exalt Realm Profounder who spoke such words to a half-saint. The expression of the old man who stood behind Man Shi was extremely unsightly right now. But unexpectedly, not only did he restrain himself from attacking out of rage, he even forced out a smile as he said, Since you want to take him with you, then my Man clan naturally doesn't dare to refuse. I refuse. Meanwhile, Man Shi spoke ferociously. Nether Maiden, my Man clan and you have always kept clear of each other's business. So why go against my Man clan for an ant? He first threatened me, then killed my woman in front of me. How would I, Man Shi, hold my head up high in the city if I don't kill him? If you refuse, then fight me. I'll leave right away if I can't take your life within 3 moves. Nether Maiden's voice was calm as before, and it was utterly tranquil. Man Shi's face grew even more ferocious. Right when he was about to attack, the old man stopped him and said, Your Highness, Nether Maiden, I, Man Yuan, apologize for my failure to educate him. Feel free to take him with you. My Man clan won't stop you. Nether Maiden turned around and walked towards the exit. Meanwhile, Mu Qingfeng's group hurriedly followed her. Yang Yi followed behind as well, but he suddenly stopped when he arrived at the door. He turned around and gazed at Man Shi and the others. Don't worry, I won't disappoint all of you. It'll take 2 hours at most. I'll definitely be back in 2 hours. Wait for me. Man Shi took a step forward, and just this step allowed him to instantly arrive before Yang Yi. He had a frenzied and savage expression on his face as he said, All right, I'll definitely wait for you. You're my grandson if you don't return, all right? Yang Yi replied, You're my grandson if I do return, all right? All right. Man Shi chuckled fiercely and said, All right, so long as you do return, Then it's fine even if you call me your great-grandson. All right, grandson. Wait for grandpa's return. Yang Yi stretched out his hand and patted Man Shi on the face before he turned around and left. You better return. Man Shi clenched his fists while his eyes flickered with madness. After he left Fu Jingxian in Mu Qingfeng's group's care, Yang Yi immediately left Lunar Right Hall. However, he was immediately stopped by someone right after he walked out of its doors. It was Mu Qingfeng. She asked, "You're going back?" Yang Yi replied, "I'll have to call him Grandpa if I don't." Mu Qingfeng sighed lightly and said, "The Man clan has been in existence for a very long time. They're a clan of body refiners, and all the members of their clan have been body refiners for generations. Because their physique is special, so they gain twice the results when cultivating in body refinement. However, from some point in time, their physique started to change, and it wasn't that outstanding any longer. So, the Man clan started to experience a decline. But even then, their reserves and strength can't be underestimated." When she spoke up to this point, she glanced at Yang Yi and continued, "Their objective was probably to gain your cultivation technique or your physique. Because besides the Man clan, there isn't any other body refiner in the hallowed halls that can attain a physical body that's even more terrifying than a half-saint, while still at the monarch realm." Yang Yi asked abruptly, "How many half-saints does the Man clan have?" "At least 5. Mu Qingfeng spoke in a low voice. "I know you're unwilling to let it go and want to take revenge for you, friend, but it really isn't the right time. Moreover, you'll be giving your life away if you go now." "Don't worry. I never give my life away." As soon as he finished speaking, he paid no further attention to her and vanished on the spot. Once Yang Yi left, Mu Ling appeared by Mu Qingfeng's side and said, "Do you think he'll be able to return alive?" "I can't really figure him out." Mu Qingfeng spoke seriously. "Regardless of whether it's his strength or identity, I can't see through any of them. As for whether he can return alive, it depends on whether Nethermaiden will act on his behalf again. If she doesn't, then he'll definitely die. 5 half-saints aren't something that he can resist. What about us? Are we not going to lend a hand?" Mu Ling said, "The Man clan grabbed a member of our Lunar Right Hall and insulted you in public. Could it be that we're just letting it go?" "What else?" Mu Qingfeng shook her head and said, "Many elders of the hallowed halls really do take good care of us. But that's because they were from Lunar Right Hall as well. Do you think they would fight the Man clan to the death for our sakes? They wouldn't. If we seek help from them, they will only ask us to seek reconciliation." Mu Ling sighed softly while dense helplessness flashed through her eyes. "However," a vicious expression flashed through Mu Qingfeng's eyes as she said, "The Man clan insulted our Lunar Right Hall and insulted me as well, so how can we just let the matter rest? We don't have the elders of the hallowed halls on our side. But our Lunar Right Hall still has half-saints. Send my orders for all the Monarch Realm members to gather. No matter what they're doing right now, they are to gather and head to the Man clan. But we don't have half-saints." Mu Ling spoke softly. Lunar Right Hall had quite a huge amount of Monarch Realm profounders, but even all of them weren't capable of posing a threat to the Man clan. Because the Man clan had 5 half-saints at least. They had no chance against the joint forces of 5 half-saints. My grandfather is a half-saint, and so is my grandmother. It's enough if we include Elder Li and Elder Tang. Mu Qingfeng spoke seriously. Hall Master, you intend to seek help from your family? Mu Ling was shocked. I would naturally not use the strength of my family if it was an enemy below the half-saint realm, but they've used half-saints against me, so I would be a fool if I didn't seek help. Go on. Tell them to gather at the Man clan. Mu Qingfeng spoke seriously. Mu Ling nodded, and then she turned around and left. Mu Qingfeng seemed to be lost in thought as she gazed at the direction Yang Yi left towards. How could someone that Nethermaiden thinks highly of be ordinary? Actually, she'd intended to seek reconciliation because it wasn't worth it to fight the Man clan. However, she changed her mind in the end. As for the reason, besides the fact that she was truly infuriated by Man Shi as he'd relied on the half-saints of the Man clan to insult her, it was also because of Mu Ling. Earlier, when she said that they were unable to take revenge on the Man clan, She saw helplessness and unwillingness within Mu Ling's eyes. Most importantly, there was self-ridicule within it as well. An organization, clan, or person could be weak, but they absolutely couldn't lack resolve. If they had no resolve, then they would definitely be finished. So, she wasn't attacking for Xianxia's sake, nor was it for Lunar Right Hall. It was mainly for herself. She didn't want to lose her resolve and determination. It wasn't long before the Monarch Realm experts of Lunar Right Hall gathered before its entrance, and there were over 150 amongst them. Mu Qingfeng spoke while she gazed at them. The Man clan first captured a member of our Lunar Right Hall for no reason, heavily injured her, and then insulted both me and our Lunar Right Hall. Do all of you think we should seek justice for this? Fuck. Kill them. How dare they insult you? Kill them. Kill them. We absolutely have to kill them, or I would be ashamed to call myself a member of Lunar Right Hall in the future. Look at Snow's Lament now. Their members don't even dare to wear their uniform when they go out. I don't want to end up like them. So, let's attack. Mu Qingfeng felt extremely gratified when she saw how furious they were, because she knew that they were clearly aware of the strength that the Man clan possessed, but none of them shrunk back. Mu Qingfeng said, "Young Man has gone to attack the Man clan. We can't make him feel that he's alone. Everyone, hear me. Raise your speeds to its limits and rush to the Man clan. Let's go." Mu Qingfeng's figure flashed as she spoke, and she transformed into a ray of light that shot towards the Man clan. Over 100 rays of light shot into the sky behind her, and they rushed off in the Man clan's direction as well. It wasn't long before news of Lunar Right Hall attacking the Man clan swept through the city, and countless people rushed madly towards the Man clan as they wanted to watch the show. I heard that the Man clan offended that fellow, young man, and that's why the entire Lunar Right Hall is going over. TSK, TSK. We'll have a show to watch now. Even though young man isn't simple, the Man clan is a clan that has existed for tens of thousands of years. Its resources and reserves aren't something that Lunar Right Hall can compare to. This time, young man is probably going to die, and the Lunar Right Hall is going to be destroyed with him. That may not necessarily be the case. After all, young man abruptly rose to prominence. I refuse to believe that he doesn't have the backing of any power or formidable figure. Indeed, since he dared to attack the Man clan, then he definitely has some sort of trump card. Cut the crap and hurry up. We'll miss the show if we're late. Yang Yi knew the Man clan had 5 half-saints, and he knew that he couldn't fight the Man clan right now. But he still went there. A sword cultivator has to have an edge that would rather break than bend. A sword cultivator has to draw his sword when it should be drawn. If a sword cultivator lost his edge, then that sword cultivator would be crippled. If the sword in the hands of a sword cultivator bowed before the strength of its opponent, then that sword cultivator would be trash as well. If a sword cultivator didn't draw his sword when it should be drawn and hesitated instead, then how would that sword cultivator's thoughts be clear to swing his sword like his own arm? The sword had to be drawn when it had to, regardless of whether the enemy was weak or strong. Of course, it didn't mean that a First Heaven Realm sword cultivator had to draw his sword when facing a half-saint. After all, that wasn't courage but idiocy. Drawing the sword when it had to be drawn actually referred to a form of spirit, fearlessness, determination, and courage. Simply speaking, don't think about whether the battle could be won. Fight it before thinking about that. If it was truly impossible to win, then run. Grandson, Grandpa is here. Yang Yi stood before the entrance to the Man clan while he enhanced his voice with profound energy, and it swept far into the distance. Could even be heard clearly almost 500 kilometers away. The door cracked open, and then Man Shi and 4 old men walked out slowly from within. So there really are those in this world who don't fear death. But don't worry, I won't let you die that quickly, because there are many things more terrifying than death in this world, and I'll allow you to experience them one by one. Man Shi was still smiling, but that smile carried slight insanity and ferocity. Yang Yi waved his right hand, and a piece of paper floated slowly towards Man Shi. He said, "It's an agreement for a life and death battle. You're a body refiner, and so am I. Moreover, my cultivation is lower than yours, so you wouldn't be afraid to sign it, right? Of course, if you ask those 4 geezers behind you to attack, then please fuck off. Because I don't really like talking with cowards. I know you're trying to egg me on, but it's fine. Because I want to deal with you myself as well. Man, she flicked with his finger, and a drop of blood flew onto the agreement. The contract was signed, so death had to be decided. Suddenly, the expressions of the old man behind Man she changed, and they looked up into the sky in unison. Over 100 rays of light were flying swiftly through the sky, and it wasn't long before Mu Qingfeng and the others appeared by Yang Ye's side. Over 100 monarch realm experts. Man Yuan frowned, and it was the same for the old man by his side. What are all of you doing here? Yang Yi was rather surprised when he saw them. This isn't just related to you. It's related to our Lunar Right Hall as well. Mu Qingfeng glanced at Man Shi and said, the Man clan openly captured a member of Lunar Right Hall. If my Lunar Right Hall doesn't do anything about it, then how would it maintain its foothold in the city? So, we've come to seek justice today. Mu Qingfeng with just these forces? Man Shi revealed a savage smile as he sized her up, and there was a wisp of lust in his eyes as he said, I heard that no one has ever laid eyes on your appearance. I wonder how you look. But it's fine because not only will I lay eyes on your face today, I'll even see you completely naked. Ha ha! Killing intent surged in Mu Qingfeng's eyes when she heard this, and all the other members of Lunar Right Hall were exasperated. Doggy man, fuck your ancestors. If you didn't have the support of the Man clan, then I could fucking kill trash like you 10 times in a day. Enough. Boss. Give the order and we'll kill that bastard. Boss. Give the order. We'll destroy the Man clan today. Most of the members of Lunar Right Hall were youths, and the young were filled with spirit and vigor. It wasn't that they hadn't noticed the 4 half-saints behind Man Shi. They just didn't fear them. Why? Because they had the numbers and they were united. I'll give all of you 3 breaths of time to fuck off right now. Otherwise, all of you can leave your lives behind. Man Yuan glanced coldly at Mu Qingfeng and the others. Man Yuan, how arrogant of you. Suddenly, a voice resounded out of thin air, and then an old man who held a walking stick in his hand and an old woman appeared by Mu Qingfeng's side. The old man glanced coldly at Man Yuan and said, let me see how you make them leave their lives behind. The Man clan has really grown too arrogant lately. Meanwhile, Elder Li and another old man arrived here. For half-saints. This time, the faces of Man Yuan and the others fell. Man Yuan glanced at the white-haired old man and said, Mu He, you intend to go against my Man clan for this body refiner? I don't know him. Mu He replied, I'm not here for him. I'm here for my granddaughter, the Hall Master of Lunar Right Hall. Actually, the conflict between the young isn't related to old fellows like us. However, you, Man Yuan, intend to rely on your strength at the half-saint realm to insult and humiliate my precious granddaughter. So, the 2 of us had no choice but to come and play with you. What about the 2 of you, Elder Li? Man Yuan gazed at Elder Li. Or is this the Hallowed Hall's intention? We aren't here on behalf of the Hallowed Halls today. We're here on our own accord. Elder Li said. We were from Lunar Right Hall, and we couldn't bear to watch it being insulted. Are you satisfied with such an explanation? Man Yuan's face grew even more gloomy while he gazed at Yang Yi. He hadn't expected that Yang Yi would first receive Nethermaiden's help, and now had the help of so many others. It was something he'd never expected, because the information he'd fathered earlier said that this body refiner called Yang Man had no background. If there was anything at all, then it would be a slight link to the fire spirit race. But the Man clan naturally had no need to fear the fire spirit race now, and that was why they'd captured Fu Jingxian earlier. Because they wanted to know what other cultivation techniques apart from the Man clan's cultivation technique could allow Yang Man to possess a physical body which was comparable to a half-saint. But he hadn't imagined that it would cause such a string of problems. I've signed an agreement of life and death with my grandson. So allow us to finish our business before talking about other things. All right? Meanwhile, Yang Yi spoke abruptly. Are you that eager to die? Man, she stared fixedly at Yang Yi. This time, there was no smile on his face, and there was only killing intent. Xianxia smiled and said, "Did you say that you'll be my grandson if I return?" "What? You dare to talk but not admit it. You're really good at talking, huh?" Manshi's figure flashed over to arrive in front of Xianxia, and he said, "I'll smash off your teeth, one by one, and then I'll cut off your tongue. Let me see if you'll still be able to speak like this after that happens." "Come on." Xianxia gestured provocatively with a finger while a cold smile suffused the corners of his mouth. "Wait." Manshi was just about to attack when Man Yuan spoke abruptly. "This is a battle of life and death, and they've even signed an agreement. So, all of you won't interfere, right?" Mu He and the others frowned, and then they gazed at Mu Qingfeng. Mu Qingfeng gazed at Xianxia instead. Xianxia smiled and said, "This is between me and him, so don't interfere if I'm no match for him. Of course, please help me stop others from interfering if he's no match for me. Kid, don't worry. No one will interfere in the battle between both of you." Mu He gazed at Xianxia and said, "However, let me tell you in advance that we won't interfere if you're no match for him." Xianxia smiled and nodded, "Of course." Meanwhile, Mu Qingfeng walked over to Xianxia and said, "Don't underestimate him. Even though he rarely fights, he's definitely not weak. Moreover, the Man clan is a clan that has existed for tens of thousands of years. Its resources and reserves are extraordinary. Regardless of whether it's techniques or treasures, they'll definitely be remarkable. So, don't underestimate your opponent, all right?" Xianxia nodded and said, "Thank you for the reminder." Mu Qingfeng nodded, and then she moved aside. Manshi was just about to attack when Man Yuan stopped him and said, "Don't underestimate your opponent. That kid isn't weak, so don't lose because of carelessness. Besides that, don't kill him. Keep him alive so that we can determine what secrets he possesses." Manshi nodded while a savage smile arose on the corners of his mouth. He said, "Don't worry, I won't kill him. I'll even slowly play with him until he dies once we've obtained the secrets he hides." The others moved aside and left a spacious area for Xianxia and Manshi to fight on. Meanwhile, more and more people were arriving from all directions. Moreover, there were even more rushing over from afar. "That's Yang Man, I know him. He killed Yu Wushuang and the white-robed vice-master of Snow's Lament that day. What the fuck? He's actually fighting the Man clan now? He really is a maleficent existence. I definitely should stay away from him. Who do all of you think is stronger? Yang Man or Manshi? I don't know. Yang Man's strength isn't bad at all, but Manshi is definitely not weak as well. At any rate, he's a member of an ancient clan. Even if his strength is slightly weaker, his equipment won't be, right? So, it's hard to decide. Cut the crap and just watch. They're about to begin." Manshi gazed at Xianxia as he slowly clenched his fists, and then he said, "Even though that woman of mine was just like a piece of my clothing or a container or mine, she was still a woman of mine in the end. Yet you killed her before my eyes and even insulted me. Do you know that I really want to kill you?" Xianxia flipped his palm, and a pair of dark golden gloves appeared on his hands. Besides that, dragon scales started to appear beneath the gloves. He refused to underestimate anyone in the hallowed grounds, especially when he couldn't reveal his true strength. "Do you know? Manshi was about to say something when Xianxia suddenly stomped his right foot on the ground and shot explosively towards Manshi. He said, "No my ass. If we're fighting, then fight. What's with all the crap?" Accompanying Xiangxia's voice was a fist that glowed brilliantly as it shot towards Manshi's head. Manshi's face turned utterly gloomy, and his gaze surged with ghastly killing intent. He didn't continue wasting his breath anymore. He clenched his right fist tightly, and then a red glow erupted from it as it smashed directly at Xiangxia's fist. It was a head-on collision. Battles between body refiners were head-on battles, and the outcome was decided by their respective strength and defense. Bang! Thunderous rumbling resounded as soon as their fists collided, and then a few dozen fine pitch-black cracks appeared throughout the space at the point of collision. As for the ground beneath their feet, it had been shattered into powder before their fists had even collided. A moment of silence ensued. Bang! Both of them were blasted flying, and every single step they took caused a deep footprint to be embedded into the ground. A wisp of seriousness appeared in Xianxia's eyes because he noticed that Manxi's body was very formidable. If it was based merely on the body, then Manxi was the strongest he'd seen amongst the profounders at the Monarch realm and below. Is that all you've got? Manxi shook his head and said, To be honest, I'm very disappointed, truly disappointed, because you're too weak. You've attacked earlier, so it's my turn now. His figure flashed forward as he spoke, and he instantly arrived in front of Yang Yi before smashing his fist forward. Yang Yi frowned and punched forward as well. Yang Ye's expression suddenly changed drastically when his fist was about to collide with Manxi's fist. It was because the space around Manxi's fist had actually collapsed. It was too late to withdraw his fist now. Bang! The spectators watched with astonishment as Yang Ye's figure transformed into a black ray of light that flew off backwards. Too weak. Manxi's voice resounded.